I live alone. It's a simple statement, but for a lot of people, it sounds like a tragedy. When I tell someone I've spent the last several years in an empty house, they usually give me that look. You know the one. That tilt of the head, that soft, pitying voice. They ask, "Don't you get lonely? Or who do you talk to?" But here is the truth that took me a long time to learn. There is a massive difference between being alone and being lonely. I've been in crowded rooms, at loud parties, and even in a long marriage where I felt more lonely than I do right now sitting in my quiet living room. Loneliness is a hunger for connection. Solitude? Solitude is a fullness of self. It took me a lifetime to understand that the silence in this house isn't empty. It's actually full of the things I was too busy to hear for decades. If you're struggling with being alone, or if you're terrified of the silence, I want to share 5 things that changed my life. These aren't just tips. They are shifts in the soul that turned my empty house into a sanctuary. The first thing I learned was, you have to become your own best company. Think about it. We spend so much energy trying to be likable for other people. We dress up, we filter our thoughts, we perform. But when you live alone, the performance is over. You are left with just you. And for most of us, that's a scary thought. Why? Because we've spent our whole lives running away from ourselves. I used to keep the TV on all day just so I wouldn't have to hear my own thoughts. I was afraid of what I'd find in the silence. But then I realized I am the only person I am guaranteed to be with from my first breath to my last. If I don't like me, of course I'm going to feel lonely. I had to start dating myself. I had to learn to enjoy my own jokes, my own observations, and even my own mistakes. Once you become a friend to yourself, the house stops feeling empty. It feels like you're finally hanging out with someone you actually like. The second thing that changed everything was treating myself like a guest. When we live with others, we make an effort. We cook nice meals. We keep the place tidy. We buy fresh flowers. But the moment we are alone, many of us start living like survivors. We eat over the sink. We leave the bed unmade. We wear the same t-shirt for 3 days, because who cares? No one is seeing me, but you are seeing you. I realized that by neglecting my environment, I was telling myself that I wasn't worth the effort. Now, I set the table, even if it's just for one. I light the candle. I buy the good coffee. Not for a guest, but for the most important person in the room. When you treat yourself with dignity, your solitude stops feeling like a waiting room for real life and starts feeling like the main event. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm a hermit or that I've stopped loving people. I haven't. In fact, living alone has made my relationships better than they've ever been. And that brings me to the third big thing I learned. Solitude is the ultimate filter for your social life. You see, when you're afraid to be alone, you'll hang out with anyone just to avoid the silence. You'll stay in toxic friendships. You'll go to parties you hate. You'll talk to people who drain your energy because, in your mind, bad company is better than no company. But once you become comfortable in your own house, your standards change. You stop being desperate for attention. Now, if I'm going to leave my beautiful, peaceful sanctuary to go meet someone, they have to be worth it. I don't need noise anymore. I want melody. I only have space for people who nourish my soul, who challenge me, and who truly see me. Living alone taught me that I would much rather have 3 deep, meaningful conversations a month than 30 shallow ones a week. I realized that most of the loneliness I felt in the past was actually just being surrounded by the wrong people. When you're okay with being alone, you finally have the power to choose who gets access to your time. You aren't lonely when you're alone. You're lonely when you're not understood. The fourth lesson that changed my life was the difference between a routine and a ritual. When you live alone, the biggest danger is drifting. There's no one to tell you to get out of bed. There's no one to notice if you spend 6 hours scrolling on your phone in the dark. If you aren't careful, the freedom of living alone can turn into a heavy, aimless fog. I struggled with this for a long time. I felt like my days were just happening to me. But then I realized that I needed to anchor my day. I needed a structure that wasn't about being productive for a boss, but about being alive for myself. I stopped having routines and started having rituals. What's the difference? A routine is something you have to do. A ritual is something you get to do. My morning coffee isn't just caffeine anymore. It's a ritual. I sit in the same chair. I watch the light hit the wall. I don't touch my phone. That 15 minutes is a sacred contract with myself. I have a ritual for the sunset. I have a ritual for reading before bed. These small anchors give my life a shape. They remind me that I am the architect of my own joy. When you have rituals, you aren't killing time. You are honoring it. You aren't waiting for the day to end. You are experiencing every moment of it. I realize that a lot of what we call loneliness is actually just a lack of purpose in the present moment. When your day has a rhythm that you created, the house doesn't feel quiet. It feels intentional. That brings me to the fifth and perhaps the most profound thing I learned, something I like to call finding your unedited voice. Think about how much of your life is spent reacting to the presence of others. When you live with people, even people you love, there is a constant, subtle pressure to be on. You adjust your tone of voice, you modulate your moods, you tuck away your strange habits. You are always, in some small way, a reflection of what they expect you to be. But when you live alone, that mirror is gone. For the first time in my life, I found out what I actually like when no one is watching. I discovered that I love to sing, even though I'm terrible at it. I discovered that I enjoy sitting in total darkness for 20 minutes before I turn on the lights in the evening. I discovered that I have opinions about books and art that I used to suppress just because they didn't match the opinions of my friends. This is the hidden gift of solitude. It is the only place where you can truly find your own frequency. In the silence of an empty house, you stop being a reaction and start being a creation. I started writing again. I started painting. Not because I wanted to show it to the world, but because my soul finally had enough room to speak without being interrupted. I realized that most people aren't afraid of being alone. They are afraid of the honesty that comes with it. They are afraid that if the noise stops, they might realize they've been living a life that doesn't belong to them. But if you can push past that fear, you find a level of creative and spiritual freedom that no relationship in the world can give you. You realize that your voice isn't something you find out there in the world. It's something that was always there, just waiting for the room to get quiet enough to be heard. So, if you are sitting in a quiet house today and you feel that heavy, hollow ache in your chest that we call loneliness, I want you to know that I understand. I've been there. I know the nights where the walls feel like they're closing in. But I want to ask you to try a different perspective. What if this time isn't a punishment? What if it's a rare, precious opportunity? We live in a world that is terrified of silence. We are told that being alone means you've failed, that it means you aren't loved, or that you aren't enough. But that is a lie designed to keep you busy and distracted. The truth is that solitude is a superpower. It is the training ground where you learn how to be a complete human being, instead of just half of a pair. Looking back at these years, I can honestly say I have never felt less lonely, because I have built a relationship with myself that is unbreakable. I know who I am, I know my value, and I know that my happiness doesn't have a minimum occupancy requirement. Remember the 5 things. Become your own best company. Treat yourself like a guest. Use your solitude as a filter for your social life. Turn your routines into rituals, and find your unedited voice. If you can do these things, you will realize that your house isn't empty. It is filled with your peace. It is filled with your growth. It is filled with the version of you that is finally finally free. Don't be afraid of the quiet. It's not a void, it's a garden. You just have to be patient enough to let the flowers grow. You aren't lost because you're alone. You're just finally in a position to be found by yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you're on this journey of finding peace in the silence, know that you aren't alone in it. We are all learning together. Take a deep breath, look around your space, and find one small thing to be grateful for today. Whether it's the way the light hits the floor or the quiet hum of your own breath, realize that life is happening right here, right now, and it is beautiful. Take care of yourself, honor your space, and I'll see you in the next one.